guys, it's your girl Etta Rosa, and welcome to the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast. Today, I have the amazing privilege to speak to Darys Avalos. She is actually physically in San Diego, California, and she kind of brought me back to my childhood, which was very nostalgic. I got very teary-eyed, and you'll see it in the video if you're actually watching it, and you'll probably hear it as well if you're listening to it on the podcast. However, it was very nostalgic for me while she shared her story and her reason why she opened up her immigration services in California. So I hope that you get a lot from this podcast episode just because it meant a lot to me. So I hope it means and it touches a little bit of your little heart too. Daddy. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. We have spoken quite a few times before today, so I am super excited and really excited for the audience to learn more about you and what you do and how you came about to this amazing company that you created. So why don't we start there and then we can move our way up from there.
Sounds good. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here to share kind of my journey on how I started my own business as an immigration consultant / freelance paralegal. I've been a paralegal for about 20 years, a little bit more. And I just kind of done a little bit of everything. I started off doing criminal defense work. And then from there, I kind of dipped into a little bit of family law. From family law, I jumped back into criminal defense because I liked it so much. Did a little bit of federal work since I'm here in San Diego, so we have a lot of border-related cases that we would work on. And then from there, I ventured into civil litigation, which I always said I wouldn't do. We learned about that in paralegal school, which I'm sure you did. And that's like the main focus of paralegal school. So I always said, I'm not going to do discovery. I'm not going to do civil lit. And lo and behold, I ended up in civil litigation, which I ended up embracing and enjoying. I did personal injury for a couple years. And then I went back into the fun law of family law, which was pretty fun and interesting and sad. It's like a combo experience there. And then along the way, I kind of always thought I wanted to open up my own business because there's so much need in the Latino community, especially here in San Diego. We're at the border of Mexico, which is Tijuana. So a lot of Latino community here that needs, just different resources. So I always said, I would joke around with my paralegal friends, like, hey, one day we're gonna open up an office in San Isidro by the border. And everybody was like, yeah, sure. And I tried law school for a little bit. That didn't work out. So I decided, I'm gonna go back to my original plan, what I always joked around about, which is open up my own office to provide, legal services without legal advice, document preparation services for the legal community, specifically to Latino community. And that's what during the pandemic kind of, made me or kind of pushed me or geared me into opening up this business, because during the pandemic, it kind of, everything was on hold, as I'm sure we all remember. And we were kind of like, is this what we really want to do? Is this how we want to, not end our life, but you know what I mean? Like you kind of start seeing like the future of how things are unfolding. And that kind of just, I was like, I don't want to not get to, live this dream of mine, or this experience of being able to provide services to people that really need it. And so that's what it kind of geared me into. I left the big firm that I was working at for family. It's an amazing firm. A great opportunity, but I was like, I'm going to just take one for the team and just take the dive. And I did. And that's what led me to open up Avalos Consulting Services, which has now slowly but surely, turned out into a very positive company. It's small, it's growing. I'm just a one-person shop for now. Hopefully in the future, we'll be able to expand, but being able to help people in a different capacity. Obviously paralegal work, but you're limited to not giving legal advice, but being able to provide them with resources where they can get court forms, where they can find attorneys that speaks their language and that are affordable. Just different services that I'm able to offer is just so fulfilling to me. It reminds me of my mother or my family that doesn't know the language. That I've been able to help them throughout the years. These people are kind of like family. I try, when they call me, it's like I'm trying to, I'm speaking to my family members, basically, is how I feel. So Yeah, sorry, I just went on a whole ramble, but
Oh my God, you're making me cry. I'm like here, I'm like I'm like crying up a storm over here. I didn't know that. So throughout all our conversations, I didn't know the reason why, which I think sometimes is so important with the when you create a company is really why. That's what makes us go every day, roll up our sleeves, and even if we want to give up because we feel like we're not getting anywhere, nobody's listening to us, our company's not growing fast enough because all these invisible deadlines. And trust me, been there, done that, completely know that world. But that's so touching. I love it. And I've been to San Diego a couple of times, so I'm really familiar with the San Diego area and definitely know what you're talking about how close it is to the border of Tijuana. But I'm like, wow, that's just really inspiring. Like, oh my God, I'm like writing down all these things that I just, came up into my head. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I love
well,
it.
as a Latina, I think you could probably identify that as I don't know about your parents, but like my parents and my family members, a lot of them, came to this country to give us, a different opportunity. But then they piece of mail comes in. It's like, ¿qué dice, mija? Like, or something because I don't say, So you're basically like their like legal advisor, So, and I'm sure a lot of people will relate to that in Latino community and other communities where there's a language. You're basically their go-to. And now I've been marketing a lot on TikTok, and I get a lot of people like myself, the sons and daughters, calling on behalf of their parents. And it's like, well, my mom told me to help them look this up for them. And it's like, it reminds me of me, you know what I mean? And that's my type of, it makes me so happy that like I'm able to help those people, because as a son and daughter, sometimes you're just like, I don't know, I'll just go online. Well, especially now, it's like back then, I don't know what we would do back then. We would just call the phone number on the left.
Phone number, like the phone book or the commercial or
yeah. Now, thankfully, we have this fabulous thing called the internet, and there's also some social media platforms that we're able to get information from. So specifically now, TikTok is a big, it's for, people say it's for your younger generation, and it is a variety of people are on there, but I do get the younger generation calling on behalf of their parents. And so that is what like reminds me of me, when I used to help my mom or my dad, or even my brother that did speak the language, but just didn't know what to do. So that just kind of reminds me of that. And so I'm sure you've experienced similar stuff like that too with family members being Latina.
yeah, so we're blessed that we are Puerto Rican, so we don't have to worry about the legal status. But so we do have an upper hand, against all other, I would say immigrants or people migrating to the States. But the language barrier is always going to be there. My parents also left Puerto Rico to come to originally to Miami, Florida, and had nothing. I think my dad had like maybe $5 in his pocket or something ridiculous like that. They started working at a McDonald's, then he started working in construction, and had like 3 jobs by the time I was born. And it's a challenge, and it's funny that you say that, because it just reminded me of a video that I was watching on LinkedIn the other day, and it had to do with this immigrant from, I believe it was Haiti, and he was during the Hurricane Sandra, I think, the really bad hurricane in Haiti. He saw the American soldiers come in and help everybody there as much as possible, and he asked his dad, hey dad, who are those people? And his dad said, they're American soldiers. And he said, one day I'm going to be that person. I want to go to other countries and help. And lo and behold, he graduates, he gets to the army, somehow he gets to the States legally and everything, and and made it happen. And I feel like as Americans, born and bred in America, we take that for granted. We take that freedom for granted. We take the rights that we have being born on American soil for granted. And I think it's amazing that you are helping other people that just don't have that are here for the American dream, but don't really know what that is and don't really know how to get there, and are coming here for a better life, but just don't know what they have to do in order to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
I know. And I feel like in their country, they get sold this amazing story. And when they come here, it's a whole different atmosphere and environment. And they don't get, they get treated like animals most of the time. And, it's just sad. It's just really sad. It's one of those I don't touch. I don't touch immigration because of that.
Yeah.
I just, it takes somebody with like with not that I'm saying I'm heartless, but with this special heart, like just a special heart to take on those type of cases. And especially with family law as well. Those are two things that I really don't dabble in. I've dabbled, a little bit, but I don't really dig my knees into it, or my heels, I should say, into
Right.
that.
I remember when I dipped into when I was like 18, like I was like 2 years in, 18, 19, that attorney was like, you shouldn't be doing family law. It's nasty. And I was like, unfortunately, it's the reality. Eventually I'm going to have to, it's out there. It's what we, the world we live in. And so I did my mom's divorce. So I worked there, and my brother's divorce, and coincidentally, and I learned from it. And, and then I went back to it last year and I loved it, but I wasn't fulfilling my dream. I mean, I loved being a paralegal, but I was working for attorneys, which is amazing, but I wasn't directly making the impact with the client. You know what I mean? So I wanted to directly make the impact directly with the client and be able to help them directly, if that makes sense.
I love it. That's amazing.
Versus versus you work for the attorney and you do work with the client, but realistically the person that's fulfilling, or I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, is the attorney, which is great. That's what they're there for. But then there's other people that don't necessarily need attorneys, that and they're intimidated by them. Again, the language, they can't afford them. There's so many different reasons. And so I was like, I want to be able to connect with the client directly. And
I
so
love
sometimes
that.
I would, and not always. So that's the main reason why I wanted to do it. So
I love it. I love your whole mission. I love the reason. I mean, there has to be people like you in this world, because we need them. So, I always say that there's always a place for everybody. There's no such thing
there
as
is.
competition. You know what I
No.
mean? I feel like everybody has their own thing and their own way of representing whatever it is that they want to represent with their companies, with their talents, their skills, their education, have what not, But I guess that brings us right into the subject of today, which is the staff hierarchy, right? And how that
Yeah.
kind of aligns with kind of what we were talking about just now. So go ahead, take the floor.
Yeah. So when I first started, I always worked at small firms. I did for a long, long time. And the reason why I stuck to small offices is because of the hierarchy that I learned about or heard about during, paralegal school, which is when you work at bigger firms, there's a hierarchy of, there's the attorneys, there's the paralegals, and then there's legal secretaries, legal assistants, and receptionists, file clerk, et cetera. No? And I was like, no, I want to be able to do everything. I was, trained to do everything by my paralegal instructor at the time. When I first got into the field, I worked with my cousin, and she trained me to do absolutely everything, from answering the phone, from getting coffee, from going to the court and preparing. So there was just that. So that's what I was used to. So I was like, I'm never going to be able to fit into this hierarchy, because I like to do it all. Maybe it's a control thing. I don't know what it is. But so I did that for many years. I worked at numerous offices. I became office manager at my last firm before I went to this big firm. And I basically wore a bunch of different hats, which was amazing. I loved doing it. But then once I went to this big firm, I had this awesome opportunity to work at Hicks, Fletcher and Mack, which is a big firm here in San Diego. And it was awesome. But then you have this hierarchy I was hired as the paralegal, and, then there's the legal secretary, there's receptionist, there's a file clerk, there's a copy center, there's all sorts of different things. I wanted to send a fax one day. It's like, you have to send it to copy center. And I was like, what do you mean? I know how to send a fax, so I can't send a fax. It's like, oh, no, paralegals don't do that. And it's
Okay.
well, okay. Or something needed to be filed. It's like, oh no, we have courier services for that. And I'm like, oh, I could run real quick over there, just get it. No, paralegals don't do that. And so you're limited to certain things because you're, billing per hour and stuff like that. So it's a little bit different versus I'm used to doing it all. So the hierarchy sometimes can be a little bit, and it's not fair, because then it creates animosity between the legal secretaries and paralegals that want to work together, but they're limited to work together because of they have to stick to, specific list of duties.
No, and I think that creates cattiness, competition.
Yeah,
It just creates a
100%.
really toxic environment, right? Because,
Yeah,
oh well, I can do it all and I don't really need this person and blah 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 blah, which is why I always suggest, regardless of whatever type of legal department, legal organization, law firm, boutique, whatever you're working at right now or trying or achieving or whatever your goal is at the end of the day, to learn the process. So
correct.
learn how the law firm works, learn all the pieces of the puzzle so that you can be a better caseload manager, because at the end of the day, that's what you are. You're there to manage a caseload. So if you
Yeah.
need to send a document to X, Y, and Z department, if you need to get things approved by a certain person, if you need to have somebody do a first draft and then you're the last one to see it before the attorney, whatever the case may be, whatever the process is, I always say that your first 30 days at the law firm or whatever organization you're working at is to learn the environment, learn who does what, why, when, where, how to communicate with them. Do they better communicate through email, phone number,
Mhm.
phone, whatever it is that they've created in this organization, you need to learn it. And those are your
Yeah.
first 30 days to do your job, right? Obviously, whatever it
Right.
is, but also to learn everything so that you can do your job and do your job right and efficiently. Because if not, you're never going to understand what's going on.
No, and
You'll feel
I
lost.
have a perfect story. This is a long time ago, but I worked for a small criminal defense firm, and I was, legal secretary. I was entry level, and there was a paralegal slash office manager. She ran everything, and we did a specific type of, they're called writ mandates, but for a specific niche for DUIs. And she wouldn't teach me how to do them, and I was like, well, I want to learn. I want to learn because, I want to learn just because I do. And so they wouldn't teach me, like, oh, no, this is just her, her title. Again, hierarchy of a small firm. But she turns out she gets really ill. And then she's out for a couple of weeks, and we have a filing comes in. And so good thing I was like, I was kind of still learning, even though she would tell me not to. Like you said, you have to learn it. I'm not trying to learn somebody else's job to take their job away. I'm there to learn in case of these type of, situations coming up. So, she's ill for a while, and then she does return. And she's like, oh, I'm moving out of state. And so then I was like, see, that's what I mean. Like, I should have just been taught since the beginning, or I should have been exposed to it, like you're saying, because at least if something comes at you, you're aware of, you're prepared. You may not know it all, obviously, because we're always still learning, but at least you're kind of have some type of knowledge of what's going on, because if not, then you're just going to be a fish out of water and have no idea what's being thrown at you. So ever since that, I had that experience, every firm I went to after that, I always made sure that everybody knew what was going on, whether you were the receptionist or the file clerk, to a certain extent, because obviously everybody has their position for a reason, but to avoid those type of things, because if somebody's absent, and we learned this during COVID, so many people got COVID, unfortunately, people were out of the office. So what do you have to do? The stuff's not going to get done. So you have to, the attorney's going to look at you and be like, okay, well, guess what? You're up. Go and figure it out. You're
Exactly.
the
And I
winner.
think that training, right? We don't have training. Let's
No.
be real, guys. There's no such thing as training. You train on the job,
Paralegal
this
school
and
does
that.
not does not get you
Well,
ready.
it's up to you to allocate an hour to, even if it's 5 hours a week, to go walk around your office, or
Mhm.
now if you're virtual, tag somebody to have a meeting and really learn the process, because there is no way that you're going to be able to do your job if you don't know what happens before you, during you, and after you. Like, that's just how it works. Like, this is no longer the factory industrial era where, the product got done by every single person, but nobody knew where the hell the nail goes, right? This is why cars were so dangerous back in the day, why products were always recalled, because nobody knew what was happening before, during, and after. So
Correct.
understanding that that's your responsibility. Nobody's just going to hand it to you on a silver platter. And this goes for promotions, this goes for, raises, whatever you're looking for in your legal career. You have to
Right.
take it on yourself. You are your value. You are your
Yeah.
value. You're the one that sets the hierarchy for yourself. And by doing that, you do it with action and supporting it with your job, right? Actually bringing a good quality product. But you're not going to be able to do that unless you understand the entire process, which is what I tell everybody. I hate when people are like, oh, I don't answer a phone. That's beneath me. What do you mean that's beneath you?
That's what you bring up a great point that when you go to paralegal school, well, I went to an unaccredited community college, but now there's all these ABA programs and there's all these amazing programs that are, out there. But there's this stigma that it's like, oh, you're just going to go into this big firm and you're going to do these motions and find, no. And the reality is you start from the bottom, which is, file clerk, receptionist, making coffee, running errands, personal assistant, you name it. You do everything and you work your way up from that, and until you get enough experience, exposure, and you kind of branch into this what's called really a paralegal experience. A paralegal, when a paralegal is all of the above, which is what I just mentioned. And so it's not just doing research, writing motions, doing filings, doing discovery. It's way more than that. And I gave a speech a long time ago, a couple of years ago at my community college to students that were graduating as an alumni. And I was like, look, like I was everything. I would pick up kids from school. I would make coffee, bring lunch, go get dry cleaning. I mean, and some people are like, oh, I'm not going to do that. It's like, no. If you want to gain, the respect of attorneys, you're going to have to do it comes down to ethical thing. If you have strong work ethic and you have great common sense on top of not being above everybody, then you're going to make it as a paralegal.
Absolutely. And teamwork, right? Nobody goes to the championship without working together. Like you imagine if the quarterback didn't communicate with the linebacker, whatever the case may be, or in baseball, if the catcher wasn't communicating with the coach and, hello, it would be a complete disaster. Nobody would make a home run. Nobody would make, whatever, guys. I'm not too good at sports, but you get the deal.
That's what I'm not trying to idea,
right? The touchdown, whatever sports you're in, definitely understanding that the team has to work together and everybody has to know their part in the actual game in order to win. Because at the end of the day, the ones that are losing out is the client. And if there's no client, there's no money. And if there's no money, there's no job. So understanding that it could be a trickle effect, that if you're passing by the receptionist desk and there's nobody there and you hear the phone ring, hey, pick it up. What does it cost you? It costs you like 2 minutes. Thank you for calling so-and-so. How may I assist you? I mean, at least even if it's just to put them on hold, at least the call was answered.
That goes back to common sense. That goes back to common sense, though. I did have a couple people. I would be like, oh, that's just not our line. I'm like, it doesn't matter.
I was an executive paralegal for a very short period amount of time, but I was an executive paralegal and I was all the things. We had a receptionist desk. We had an answering service too. So when I would go out to lunch and the receptionist was out to lunch at the same time, we had it was a boutique law firm, but it was bulk money. It was business corporate law. So you can only imagine how much money they had. Yeah. So it was in an executive suite. I had my window, like the whole 9 yards. I was a complete and utter full-blown executive paralegal. But do you think that if my attorney asked me for a cup of coffee, I wasn't going to get it for them? Like, hello, of course I am. You are paying me good money. I am going to do it.
Yes.
Even if my legal assistant, hey, I'm going to grab a cup of coffee in the cafeteria. Would you like anything? I mean, it's just being human, guys.
And courteous. Yeah. Courteous, respectful, teamwork. Yeah. All the above. I completely agree with you. And unfortunately, I feel like that's lost its way in the legal community. And but as I speak to other people, I'm like, there's hard to find out there, and I'm sure they're out there. It's just we just need to kind of bring them back and be like, this is how things are done to get
and I always get this question from attorneys that are looking for paralegals. They come to me because they know I have a big paralegal following. So they're like, hey, do you know of a paralegal of this, and this? And they send me a whole long list of, things, of tasks. And the first thing I ask them is, what are you really looking for? Because any paralegal do this, but what are you actually looking for? Do you have a receptionist? Do you have a legal assistant? Do you have this? What are you actually needing in your law firm? Mm-hmm. And I think that's the disconnect between paralegals and attorneys. Attorneys don't know what they need, and paralegals don't know what they need to do. So it's like this big gap.
Attorney has a different style. So then that's another thing that you have to, that's a whole nother topic. But
for another day.
A whole other podcast. But yeah, that's another thing. So yeah, like you said, they don't know what they want. They don't know what they need to do. And it's kind of like reading minds. So
like we're not mind readers. One day, maybe.
That one we're definitely not. That's definitely not part of the paralegal qualifications. This mind reader. Well, sometimes I would pin it. I would get on the nail, but that's after working with an attorney for a long time.
Yeah, if you know your attorney, you know how they work, you can really understand. Oh, I know that they usually want a motion for extension of time, regardless if we need it or not. They want to file it just so that we have that extra cushion. Boom, prepare it, send it out. Oh, you know what? I know that the next step to this case are depositions. Let me get on that. Let me start sending out emails. Let me start asking the attorney who they want to depose. Let me be proactive. You know, just be that proactive person. But
they love that.
Proactive. It's running your caseload. It's running your case. Like you have to move.
Step ahead.
Yeah, you always have to. You always have to do that. You always have to look at what the other side might or might not bring. You know, especially when it comes to the discovery portion of it. Understanding your attorney, your case, your client is really your job. That's really what the bulk of it is.
Yes.
And I don't understand how we became taskers, you know, just completing a task. It's like, no, that was never the position. You know, that was never what we were intended to do. But anyway, I digress. So do you have any tips for the audience regarding how to beat the hierarchy, how to, you know, really be that person that the law firm needs and show like they're invaluable, you know, like that they're invaluable, right? That they have that go-to personality.
Yeah. So going back to what you said, being proactive is 100% a huge deal. All attorneys, I think not only attorneys, any employer loves that you will be a step ahead of the game. So for example, if you know a discovery is coming up, you know, you're going to start making up, creating the templates, the shells, you're going to be a step ahead. You're going to look at the calendar weeks in advance is what I would do. Look at the calendar week in advance, what's coming up. Yeah, sometimes it's so busy, there's no time to look at the calendar. I completely understand. But when you have that little bit of downtime or at the end of the day, I would do that sometimes maybe on a Friday. Because Friday sometimes it's a little slow. At the end of the day, Friday, okay, what's going on next week? Oh, there's, discovery is due. There's 4 sets of, different things of discovery that are due. Are we going to need an extension? How we talk to the client? Just being ahead of the game. It's so proactive, basically setting up files for the attorneys, for their hearings that are coming up. Just so many different tips that you can be proactive. Going back to your question about being in the hierarchy, like I said, just kind of being willing and open to doing a little bit of everything, obviously with boundaries, obviously, because boundaries sometimes can get crossed, but with, as long as you're comfortable with it, but never think that you're above it, because at the end of the day, nobody's above anything, is what I think. But some people do have that mentality, but always just be realistic. Like the reality is you are an employee, you need this job and you want to get ahead. So in order to get ahead is you need to be able to get on these little stepping stones to get up to that level and, reach the salary that you want, the position that you want. It's all baby steps. It's all baby steps. So yes.
I love it. I love those tips. And they're so important. Communication, learning how to communicate with the clients and the colleagues. I mean, all this is so important. And I love it because this is going to be an amazing segue to my other episodes of the podcast. So this is going to be great.
Perfect.
This is going to be amazing because I definitely have a lot of other episodes that have a lot to do more, because these are the main questions I get about emotional intelligence, communication, things that are not really taught in the education system at all, like anywhere. It doesn't matter what degree you have. I have friends that are finance majors, therapists, business administration, health administration, and none of them are taught emotional intelligence, communication, how to deal with it. Even my therapist, okay, even the people that have gone to, done their PhD in mental health, do not learn fully how to communicate with certain types of personalities and backgrounds. So it's like, why? Question mark? Like this should be like in our core curriculum at this point.
It should, but I think you honestly learn it as you go, and because you don't know what personalities you're gonna, face. You honestly don't. I have worked with a number of attorneys that have none. There is no one that is the same, and so and no client is the same. Well, some clients, I could probably bunch a couple clients that are similar in different aspects, but like you said, I don't think you can learn it. I wish there was a course, and I do agree with you. But I think it's because we don't know what we're gonna face in the real world.
And it's not, I don't think it's so much about learning. I think it's more about accepting, right? Changing our reactions to certain situations. So perfect example, and shout out to my client. I won't mention their name, but I was with my client the other day in her office, and she was communicating with opposing party, an attorney. And they're both attorneys, by the way, FYI. So both attorneys negotiating. That was the whole purpose of the call, was to negotiate, to come to terms and agreement for the best benefit of both parties, right? That's the whole purpose of it. It was a whole conference call. We all set it up, you know, everybody was on board with it. And that was the reason why I came to the office, was to listen in on the call, take notes and minutes and all that stuff, so that we can kind of have an idea of where our client and the case stands, right? So here she is, she's talking, they're fine, everything is fine. All of a sudden, this other co-counsel comes on the call and starts being difficult. I watched my word there, but very.
And I was like, wait.
Not the D word I wanted to use, but yes, difficult. Started overstepping the boundaries, like you said, and started saying that they needed to go back to la da 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 because they had no idea what they were talking about. And my client took it like a pro. I mean, she is a pro, but really like she went dead silent, like completely dead silent, and kind of like soaked it in for a little bit. Didn't even get angry at all at the fact that what she was basically disrespected. Probably had more experience than the other person anyway, but whatever. We're not even getting into details. And you know what? She responded. It was eloquent. It was professional. It was polite. It was prompt. It was everything that I always hoped that I could be in a situation like that. And they basically said, this is not about me. It's about our clients. And that's what we're here for. So if we can just go back to what we were talking about, that would be great, you know? And that was amazing, you know, how they handled that situation. And I would have said so many words.
That takes a lot of willpower, lots of willpower.
Again, it has nothing to do with the personalities that are coming at you. It's everything to do on how you respond, right? Because the response is what's either going to escalate it or demolish it, which is basically what she did. She's just like, that was it. Like, that was the end of that, and just continued on with the negotiations. Because at the end of the day, her ethics and her oath is to her client, right? So yeah, I mean, powerful, right? Super powerful on how a reaction can really, you know,
make or break it.
The next step of that communication or that certain interaction. So yeah, you're right. To your point, we are not going to be able to learn how to handle or how to, you know, create this formula, right, for these difficult situations or, you know, challenges that they're going to happen, guys. I mean, we don't live in La La Land, you know, there's no rainbows.
Trust me, I wish we did.
I wish it would be great, but there wouldn't be a legal industry, right? Because the legal industry is all about dispute. So there wouldn't be a legal industry.
It would get boring. Yeah, it would get boring after a while. But yeah, like you said, so yes, maybe going back, maybe there should be a class about how you could react to these type of situations, because we're not going to learn it. That's for sure. But even then, so I still feel like even if there was a class to like learn on how to, you know, react and, you know, all the emotional stuff, in the situation, it depends. I think, it depends on the person. It depends on the mood you're in that day. I don't know. There's so many different factors. But she reacted perfectly, and that's the best way, because you're not stooping down to the other person's level, and because then, you know, it's like you said. At the end of the day, we're all here for the clients. That is our main goal. And some people don't have that mentality, but it should be that way, because at the end of the day, we're here to work for the clients and get them a positive result. So
absolutely. And trust me, I respond better in writing. I'm not very, like, I love to talk. Obviously, I have a podcast, a YouTube.
I love to talk
do like speech engagements almost every week. I'm always on somebody's platform, which is great. I love it. But so the verbal aspect is fine. But when it comes to challenges, difficulties or conflict of any sort, I respond a lot better in writing than I would like on the dime. And I think that's just because the way I process information. So I'm not an instant person. Like I need to kind of very introvert in some ways when it comes to that. I know, hard to believe that I'm an introvert, but very introvert when it comes to that. It takes time for me to process, right? Information. Right. And I'm just like a legal professional at heart. I like to do my research. I like to, create, a nice, full, factual opinion, and not base it off of others' opinions or interpretations or perspectives. I want to create my own. So when you come at me, right, like all guns blazing, I was very quick to react in an anger, defensive kind of way. Yes, Latina, hot-headed, definitely. She's still in there somewhere.
Spicy, yeah. You gotta put the spice away. I get it.
But you know what? That's good though.
That's good though, because like you said, if it's writing, it's better because then you're kind of like, okay, let's take a step back. I'm not gonna say what I really want to say, X, Y, and Z. But so that's better because, like you said, like we want to keep it all, kind of peace and love to a certain extent, and get an eloquent and make your point.
Right. But I'm not saying bend down and bow, right? You're not bending down and bowing.
No.
You are definitely going to get your point across, but you need to be heard and understood. Yes. When you're yelling and you're being, angry and you're really being like defensive, you're not getting your point across, which defeats the whole purpose of the interaction to begin with, right? So I think a lot of people don't understand that. At the moment, it feels great, right? Because you actually did something about it. But it's like my good friend Cindy Villanueva talks about in her book, Don't Fight Mad. She was also on the podcast. She talks about that. She talks about don't fight mad, right? Like you can still fight. You can still defend your case or defend your opinion or fact or whatever that interaction is, but do it in a way where you're actually heard and understood. Because if not, then what's the point? What are you doing? Right?
Just going around in circles. Yeah, exactly.
Well, it was a pleasure to have you on the Let's Talk.
Thank you for having me.
I'm pretty sure we're way over, but I don't care. We made it happen.
We did.
I don't know how the weather is over there in California, but I'm jealous because over here
it's San Diego, and not to throw it in your face, but we're always 70s over here. It's a little bit of June gloom, but we'll take it. We'll take it, and I'm so excited that you had me on. It's a pleasure. I feel super grateful that you invited me to be on this. So.
Of course, a pleasure having you. I mean, wouldn't have it any other way. So thank you so much. And to my audience out there, until justice is served, mwah, love you guys.
Thank you.